natural, all nature. Corinne Gaines, her family, was just awarded $38 million. What happened here was she was stopped weeks before she was killed by the police. And when she was stopped, she was claiming individual sovereignty with the police officers, in which, in her explanation why she shouldn't have gotten out the car and gave her ID to them so they could properly do their thorough investigation of who she was and her car and all that was going on, basically. But her car tags were basically out, so that's why they pulled her over. So they were trying to see what was going on. And
when you put your hands on me, I promise you will have to murder me. They tell you get out this car or take your seatbelt off. You do not get out this car. Do you understand?
They came in and raided her house, and they said it was just from a traffic violation warrant. They were just serving a warrant, but most of the public believes that they were targeting her and going after her because of what she had just did.
Police.
What are they trying to do?
In a room inside of her apartment as they were raiding her apartment, coming inside, basically reiterating some of the same rhetoric and the same language, essentially, that of she has the right to stand her ground and she's not coming out. And if they proceeded to come all the way in, she would respond with gunfire, and that's exactly what happened. And she ended up dying. Her son was shot a couple times. He ended up surviving. She ended up dying. But her family was just awarded $38 million from that. And my biggest fear is now this will be a way for Black Lives Matter to really encapsulate on the cultural wars that we're kind of engaged in right now, in the sense of race relations in the whole entire United States. Because if you ask me, Black Lives Matter, they don't have just a true sought out outright agenda in terms of what they're doing, in terms of a whole as a movement. Every time something happens and people are gunned down and people are shot, they come out, they yell, they scream, they protest, but they have no clear set of policy initiatives that they want to see put forward. But yet they want to see drastic change and a revolution in the sense of their cause, but they can't really explain what they want to see change. They just want to see something change. That, Mr. Mack, what do you think about these cultural wars that now they have successfully, if you ask me, they have successfully turned the national debate into a race debate, basically, which is why I say this is going to be one of Trump's downfalls, because he just doesn't get it from that aspect, from that viewpoint. And let them tell the Democratic Party they do get it.
They don't seem to have a really strong vision for what would make things better. They're just kind of hell-bent on revolution to a certain degree. And I would say that that's part of their Marxist, philosophy, where, nothing matters as much as the revolution, and it doesn't really matter what comes after it as much as taking down the systems that exist. And really, people say, that they get people all juiced up, like using race, using really, the poor against the rich, using any type of dichotomy that they can to get people angry enough to help them kind of create enough chaos, and the people who are involved don't necessarily know, what they're getting themselves into as far as what it'll actually look like if, you want to call the police for burglary or for domestic violence or for, drug dealers who are selling to kids or something like that. And the cops say, well, we don't do that anymore. We're just here for violent crimes. And, there's arguments, and a lot of people are arguing, defund the police and put it into social programs. And okay, you can do that, but then you're putting a lot of people on their own for all sorts of stuff. So it's not necessarily like that people know exactly what the other side would look like. I think the people who are in charge know what it looks like because they have a definitive plan, and that definitive plan has been there since the early 1800s, in the mid 1800s with Karl Marx. And most people who want to support black people or who are black themselves and have experienced different types of racism and wish that they had it, they believe that this is part of their movement. They're in it in a very pure way, and I know people who are in it in a very pure way who believe that, hey, we are fighting for a better society, for a society with less racism. We want to highlight the reality that sometimes black people don't get treated as well, and we would like that to change. And they think that the actual leadership and the people who made the Black Lives Matter organization, who are trying to do something else, they think that they're perverting that pure, noble agenda, when in reality it was set up as a deceptive group. Black Lives Matter is a very deceptive name, because if you disagree with the name, then there's a problem with you, and you probably are racist.
That's the times that that's the times that we're in that are really scary. And Al Sharpton really painted a great picture of this when he explained about how earlier in the 60s, white people used to look down on him in the airport, the same airport. He basically is seeing a group of young white kids saying no justice, no peace, and saying Black Lives Matter. And these same folks are more culturally woke than a lot of black people themselves. A lot of the same folks that will perpetuate this anger and madness if you do not use their hashtag in the correct manner or way, which I don't want them to start engaging with and start moving into that type of territory, but they've already started doing it in regards to, how can I put this? I guess you could say censoring free speech, because when people say all lives matter, police lives matter, blue lives matter, hey, that's their right to say that. If they don't understand your movement, they just don't understand your movement. You just have to move on. But now, like I keep saying, they're engaging into this cancel culture to where they're gonna cancel you if you like just basically disrespect them in any way, shape, or form. We had a black man sitting in the Oval Office for a decade and he didn't do nothing. So if you just want to get to the point, Black Lives Matter was created under President Obama. This is the type of stuff that people don't want to talk about. It was created under a black president. So you say they're being driven by Marxist ideology, I should say. There's a lot of speculation that they're owned by George Soros. I don't know. I want to say they're independent. They started off as an independent entity. It was created by two girls, as we all know. They created the hashtag and it went viral. But now there's just no clear pathway for them. Scary territory that we're moving into. Now we can't even say master bedroom, because say that itself alludes back to slavery in times of Jim Crow, basically.
Yeah, I heard that. So I guess what I would say about that is I've never personally experienced more authoritarian and anti-Bill of Rights people than rich white people who tend to vote Democratic or are part of the Democratic establishment or the Democrat establishment. it's a really rich elitist kind of philosophy that I was exposed to 20 years ago, and was a part of those circles, kind of almost unknowingly, because of where I went to go to college originally to play football. But it's a never-ending kind of consuming desire for change. They can't ever accept that things might be better than they were before, or that when they do get better, then finally we can have peace. It's a all-encompassing, devouring organism that I would say that they're following after, that at some point the change itself is the idolatry. The change itself is the goal, not that the change actually leads us somewhere better, but that the change fulfills some type of psychological and narcissistic pleasure for them, that they have power over others, so that they can change things, and they can change the language, they can change the culture, they can, take Aunt Jemima off the maple syrup bottles, even though she's like an amazing example of the success of, a black business person in the family disagrees. It is a very dangerous movement. I agree with that, and we are on the precipice again. It was hidden for many people in 2016. Speaking of Black Lives Matter back then, one of the major spokespersons, I can't remember his name now, but he was going around when they thought Hillary was going to win, and he was on the Steve Colbert show, and he was like, so, Stephen Colbert was asking him, so what are you all about, and what is the goal? And one of the last thing he said was, he wants people to be open to the idea that it's okay to take some property from others and to give it to other people based on something in history or whatever. And this is a very, Marxist socialist idea. And Colbert, kind of knee-jerk replies, he's like, well, you can't have my money. And, they laughed and joked around, but he knew that that's what they were getting at, and that is a part of what they're getting at in their ideology. Some people are privileged, they have privilege, and those people, because in order for there to be injustice, that privilege needs to be taken away, and that means property values or property assets, they need to be equalized, because there's no justice until that privilege is removed. And even if that privilege was there because of your own, you came from poverty and did it yourself, or whether you got that privilege because, your parents were successful, it doesn't matter. Some people have more than others, and in the Marxist philosophy, and in socialism, in most socialisms, that's not an okay thing.
Yeah, precisely.
They attach it to, in this country, they attach it to white privilege because, well, that is very convenient.
Yes, it is very convenient at the moment, I should say, and they tie it into white privilege, but to some degree, Mr. Mack, this is where they are correct. Now, we don't believe in taking away everything in terms of actually taking away what has just made you wealthy. What you just described, that is pure command economy communism. And basically, yes, everyone's on a fair playing equal ground. That's Marxism. We're not talking about that. The Sanders movement has never talked about that at all. We just have said, instead of them basically constantly adding on piles of wealth that they'll never actually get to or spend it at all in any way, shape, or form, why not redirect some of that money to the American people, stimulate the American people, because they're gonna spend money every single day on a daily basis. That money goes back into the economy and you have a prosperous economy. Businesses need consumers, and how do you get consumers to go to those businesses? Only if those consumers can do it at a good buying rate. So that's all we've ever said. Hell, in some ways, our philosophy in terms of the Sanders movement, a real progressive, stimulates capitalism. So that's what we've always argued. That's nothing more, nothing less. Now, what they are engaging in, yes, that is pure communism and Marxist ideology philosophy. We don't want to go down that direction. That's why I say they're a disorganized group from the very beginning, from just the inception of them. They were started under a black president.
Yeah, but I would say, just to stop you right there, I would say that's where the base of the Democratic Party is leading right now. Is that what you just said you don't want? That's where the party leadership is taking the left and the rest of the country. If they can.
And you're right about that. You're right about that. There's just no other way to go around that, because in fact, many people don't even know this. Black Lives Matter, not only did they give to Bernie Sanders in terms of their donations that people were donating from them, but they were donating to all the other presidential candidates all at the same time. So in essence, it's like, what the fuck is the point if you're just going to prop up all the other presidential Democratic candidates to go up against Sanders, to take away and stifle votes away from him? Because at the end of the day, that's all it was just a big old game. So essentially, the second person they donated to the most was Joe Biden, Elizabeth Warren, Pete Buttigieg, Kamala Harris, and then the National Democratic Party. So
yeah, I guess who's going to get the cabinet jobs if Biden gets elected?
Probably all those folks and a lot of their staffers. That's the scary part, though. That's the scary part. This is just technocratic neoliberalism politics, basically. No, Biden is capitalizing off of it because, like I keep saying, Black Lives Matter has successfully shifted the whole entire national debate around this cultural race issue. Don't get me wrong, which has always been a problem. They just have propped up the cultural issue of itself up back once more. So again, we all know this has been a plague on America, but now they propped it up in a way to where they don't know what to do with it. That's what I'm really trying to say. So they've done that, and it's because of their affiliation with the Democratic Party. They actually believe that the Democratic Party, this Democratic Party, will change the narrative and change the realities of everyday life. But there's no actual policy proposals by the Democratic Party themselves. Like I keep saying, you can ask any Biden supporter, what's his biggest policy? And they can't tell you. That's a problem. But yet he's leading, and he's perhaps going to be our next president of the United States, but they can't tell you anything. And what does he want to do to shift things culturally? No, they can't tell you at all. Trump, you could literally sit down and talk politics with me and tell me at least. The things he was saying were crazy, but you can at least talk about it. Biden, you can't do that. But yet he's the person that's perhaps about to take the presidency.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that what Trump would say is crazy, because I believe most of them are.
Balloons, I should say, the way he would frame it to the public, the public would deem it that way. Just with his rhetoric, like all Mexicans are rapists and things of that nature, when he would say things like that. That's more so.
Well, he never said that. He never said all Mexicans are rapists. Look at the video, I can send it to you.
But he did say it though. And that's all the media industrial complex needs, as you know, to actually frame this in the minds of everyday people. I get what you're saying, but it's the way they have framed it to seem deemed crazy.
Yeah, they're tricking people. I know people that think that Trump told everybody to drink like Clorox and stuff, or Lysol.
And majority of the public believes that. That's what I'm trying to tell you. The majority of the public believes that, and that's where Trump is in trouble.
People who do not do their own research, yes.
And that's where Trump is in trouble, because the majority of the public is easily convinced like that by the complex, just like that. That's just how powerful they are. Like I said,
unfortunately, that's true. But that just shows us that we're in a period where the people who own the media, who are in control of the media, have a lot of power, and it's not really good because it's not well thought out, and it's not honest.
Not honest, and on top of that, like, a lot of people still have that basically that image of him saying grab all women by the you know what and all that or whatever. Like a lot of this is still in people's minds, and a lot of people that didn't vote in those states that he has to win, that he must win if he really wants to be in the White House again. But nevertheless, as I was getting at, like I said, Biden, you can't even have an actual conversation about his policies other than he just wants to significantly advance Obamacare, and you can't really even tell me how he wants to do that, but he just wants to do it, and that's literally it.
Yeah, tell me if you disagree. To us, it seems like he's just saying what he's being told to say, and that he doesn't even either A, believe it, or B, understand it that well. He's just trying to memorize what he's been told.
Precisely, yes.
That's what it seems to be.
That's yes. He is a puppet that's literally been exposed. I guess you could even say that. He's all these main Democratic talking points and things of that nature that you can tell he really wants to say very badly, he really wants to get out, but he can't do it because of his dementia-oriented state. And it's quite frankly sad to see, but at the same time, hell, people are the numbers are there for him. Like, he could have a bad night and still be the president. That's basically what I'm telling you. Like, that's literally what is happening because of the cultural shifts in our country.
Yeah, I'm not worried about it. I know that the evidence seems to, to suggest that everything you're saying is accurate, and I'm sure there is a lot of evidence that suggests that. But those of us who, and I've told you this so many times, those of us who lived through the last election, they know that a lot of it is almost exactly the same what they were saying in 2016 in the summer. That Trump has no chance, there's no path to victory, he's so underperforming. Time magazine and several others, kept repeating different forms of the same cover of Trump's having a total meltdown, the whole thing is falling apart, he's going crazy, he has no chance, the polls show that there's no way he could catch up. I mean, we lived through that every day for months. And so, like, it's kind of funny, and it's scary at the same time, because it's like they're playing the same hand that lost last time, but they seem to have maybe enough power and influence over the public mind where they could play the same hand that failed so badly for them last time and still win. And that's kind of like a really interesting psychological phenomenon in itself.
Yes.
That they're so kind of arrogant, and their power had gotten to their minds so much, and they had pretty much won everything that they wanted to do for so long that they can't even contemplate that the path that they went on, or that they're still on, actually might not be a good thing for this country, or for at least a lot of people in it.
Doesn't have a chance. He blew it.
John Dudley is talking about President Trump, who he supported 4 years ago, but won't again.
He had everything. We were so excited in the beginning. A businessman to run our country like a business. And it hasn't happened. All he succeeded in doing was he juiced up the stock market, and now that's gone to pot because of the coronavirus.
Dudley is a retired banker and the face of a new Trump campaign worry, losing the senior vote. Amid summertime signs of anxiety, from the beach to testing sites for soaring COVID cases. Here in Florida, people 65 and older made up 21% of the vote in 2016. Trump won that group by 17 points. Polls now show Joe Biden with an edge amongst nationally.
I just think that this has got to be a wake-up call to a big portion of America. I think a lot of people stayed home in 2016 because they weren't happy with Hillary.
For Trump, there is virtually no path to winning without Florida, which make places like the on-top-of-the-world retirement community critical terrain.
I had to change parties. I could not do this anymore.
Paula Schelling abandoned the Republican Party. Marcia Lund still considers herself a Republican, but not a Trump one.
I hope that I was wrong in not voting for him and that he would turn out to be a great president. But it didn't happen. Even
loyal Trump supporter Robert Bleffin wishes the president would do one thing.
Our president should wear a mask because, we're doing it. We're supporting him.
On Florida's Gulf Coast, Trump won Pinellas County by 1 percentage point, the same margin he carried the state. Since then, Democrats have seen a new surge in voter registration.
There are more Democrats now than there used to be in years past.
Do you know any people who voted for Trump last time who are not going to this time?
Actually, I know several, including my son and grandson.
The airwaves are already noisy, including this Trump ad questioning Biden's fitness for office.
Trump is not that much younger. But in the case of Joe Biden, I think his inherent wisdom and his desire to surround himself with the best people. That's the wrong place to talk about age.
It's the great state of Florida.
Sheila Griffin, secretary of the county GOP, believes the president's record and resilience will lead to his re-election.
If you're talking to the base, his standing is as strong as ever, and it has not going to change.
But as Biden supporters gear up for November, Trump is also a motivating force for them.
Trump is our biggest ally. Just an enormous amount of energy that I've seen and never seen before.
Those are real people, Mr. Mack. Those are real people. These aren't just actors that they have found somewhere in the basement or anything like that. If that's the case, you could say the same thing about Fox News and their propaganda. It's literally this so, I mean, these are real people, and heck, if you want to say that maybe some of it was staged or whatever, at the same time, there's actual voters out there that are of the same demographic that this is going to influence in such a way to produce the outcome that they want to see. Like I keep saying, Biden, he has those white college elite liberals who have college degrees and they're basically older now. They're all older. That's the exact demographic that's going to carry him over the line. And it's that same Ivy League elite class that Obama used on top of the cultural narrative at the time, with him being a black man and him solidifying a minority base across the country. That's what Biden has tapped into now. How, I don't really know, but the culture and the media really doesn't care about all his time basically suppressing and oppressing the black community, really, if you look at his record in depth, and Kamala Harris as well, if you just look at the records in depth. But the black community really doesn't care, and that's the scary situation that we're in. They don't care, and they're willing to put him over the finish line because he's better than Trump. This is really going to be an election of the president is really just hated that much. Kind of like a George H.W. Bush. He's really just hated that much. That's basically what we're looking at.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. And you can, I mean, these were all the same arguments again in 2016 against Trump. And you can say, well, Hillary was more hated than Joe. And
she was. Like, the evidence is there.
I'm not saying that, but like, the arguments against Trump, you can consider the Trump thing or the Trump election to be like a fluke. But I mean it's not even in my mind, and from what I was teaching on this when I was 5 years ago, and from what I observed there's so much more public support for Trump now than there was 5 years ago or 4 years ago or even 3 years ago, that it's like not even close. It's not the people who were part of the Republican movement that came out first against Trump and that actually are huge supporters of him now. That didn't happen until really late, and there's a faction of the Republican Party, the Mitt Romney group, and the elitists that really were, kind of in it for themselves, that seem to have taken over the Republican Party before Trump. That they're never Trumpers, and I think that's really between 4 and 5% of the party. I think those are the elitist parts of the party. The 43 alumni for Biden, which is the bureaucrats that were appointed under Bush that are voting for Biden. They're elitist, rich snobs that don't care about the people, that don't know anything about regular conservatives or the needs of people in cities because they've never been in those social circles, and they are and they're used to having a lot of power, and especially if they were appointed under Bush, and then the size of the executive branch explodes even more under Obama, they probably thought that they would have that power for their entire lives. And I can tell you that you said it's kind of like crazy. Not like Joe Biden would become like the media darling and this kind of like savior figure of the country, as they kind of prop him up in a similar way to Obama and how it got there. I mean, this was decades in the making, and there's just so much stuff that wasn't that the American people kind of that was pushed on us over the last few decades that people just don't really know about, and that were considered, people who talked about them would be considered fringe conspiratory people. But I mean, the Democrat Party leadership for a while, and it became open, and I would teach this as part of my government course, was that there's a good, strong faction in the Democrat Party who believed that we should take down the American flag and replace it with the United Nations type flag, and that we should kind of take down our Constitution, put it down, pretend that it doesn't exist, and we should kind of, morph into some type of international consensus for how we see things from now on, and kind of forget the history. And they've done that in the European Union, and this is why a lot of populist groups and right-wing groups kind of sprang up since Trump, is because they were getting smushed. Thousands of years of culture, hundreds of years of national identity was getting smushed under a European Union with judges making decisions in a foreign country that didn't even speak their language and know what was going on in their homes. So they wanted to do that in the United States too, and it's been a long plan, and it's also a part of a type of socialism that you could consider to be Fabian socialism, or it's a big world government socialism that a lot of people who have had leadership in our country's history have had some type of ties to. And
but now we're about to return back to that. We're about to return back to that, and that leads me to the point of there being more populist aspects and cells rising up within the United States itself. Because, like I keep saying, once Biden becomes elected, this is going to become business as usual. We're going to return right back to that Fabian socialism and corporate elitist capitalism, globalist elitist capitalism in which you're talking about. And he's only going to significantly advance that drastically. And all the folks who've always made money and always benefited from this type of system, including Trump himself in many aspects and ways, and populist groups and organizations are rising across the United States. We're already seeing a rise in militias right now as I speak.
Counter threat, because threats don't mean shit to us. Y'all been threatening us since Birmingham. I ain't seen shit. When it's July the 4th, and all you scary ass Negroes that pass that shit around, look at what the fuck you did. You made blacks come out. I don't see no white militia. Look to the boogie boys, the 3%ers, and all the rest of you scared ass rednecks. We here. Where the fuck you at? We in your house. Let's go. NFAC, motherfucker.
Hardcore black leftist organizations basically rising up like the Black Panthers, and I'm pretty sure you're going to see some rise up of the right-wing aspects as well to really defend and protect their neighborhoods as well. But I don't know how long America can survive moving at this rate, I should say. We're already seeing all types of rebellions now in terms of different things happening, in terms of a big cultural impact, a cultural aspect with police brutality. And once Biden is elected, we're not only going to see these types of things continue because, like we all know, there's Democratic mayors more so in power than Republican mayors all across the country, where lots of these things happen and occur, and they're controlled by lots of Democratic elitist judges and things of that nature, and these things still happen. So once Biden returns back to power, he's only going to appoint more people like that, and these type of politicians that are going to keep this crony capitalistic system going, America is going to be in for quite anarchy and a civil war-ish type of scenery, I would suspect.
Is elected, I think that's what a lot of people are afraid of that know what's going on. I don't think, and I think based on his VP pick, we might see Biden resign if the VP pick is of the quality of person that would be more like Obama or even more extreme.
That's all they're doing.
Force.
That's all they're doing. They're trying to craft a VP candidate that's going to be like an Obama. And Black Lives Matter is successfully doing that, like I keep saying, just basically in essence wanting some type of black person to be the VP, no matter if that person has substance of any kind. And the Democratic establishment is saying, fuck it, just put whoever we want in charge is gonna basically mirror Obama best to the fullest, I guess you could say. And they feel like Kamala is that person. She's just that person. She was great friends with the Obamas back in the 90s when she was a tough on crime type of district attorney to begin with, putting innocent black people in jail, literally putting innocent black people in jail, but that's a different conversation for a different day. But this is the person who they're about to have as the vice president and then potentially the president, because I mean, Biden has said it before, he could potentially be in a situation to where he becomes the president and then he basically hands the baton off to someone younger and a person of color. So if he starts using that type of language again, it's going to be the perfect encapsulation of the cultural wars that we're seeing right now in the United States. And they're going to believe him. They're going to really believe him, and they're going to vote for him at high magnitudes and high rates because they're just that much hatred of Trump. It's just that type of election year. There's just no other way to put it. And like I said, it's probably going to look like 92 basically in many aspects, except Texas and Arizona is really going to turn. It's going to probably look like that in many aspects.
So let me go back to something real quick, and that is the idea that I think Obama represented, that we don't need the American flag anymore. It's kind of in the way of the new globalist program, right? And what I would suggest is, we started with individual sovereignty, that if you can't have a strong national sovereignty, you can't enforce a individual sovereignty, or you can't let people have it. Because in a socialist program or in a Marxist program, everybody has to fit in the design of the program, whether it's a command economy or some type of crony capitalism or fascist, where the government, picks the winners and losers. Now, if I think that's the road that Obama put us on, was that globalist vision, right? That is the road that Biden is promising to continue. Now, if Kamala Harris becomes the VP, that is the road that she will forcefully use. She will force people into it. Like, force meaning you do not have constitutional rights. You are an enemy of the state if you do not fall in line.
She's one of the biggest proponents.
That is the kind of future we're at now.
Basically, because
let me say one more thing on that.
Mm-hmm.
The socialist vision, and this is an old communist thing, and it's what leaders do. They stir up certain populations so that militias grow in power. They defund the police. They want to keep people out of jail because it's a way to keep the law-abiding citizens in a constant state of fear. Because they can use those groups, leaders like Harris or Obama can use those groups to suppress any type of rebellion in their mind. And in our mind, we're just saying, hey, we want freedom of speech, we want to be left alone, we want to have our constitutional rights. And they're saying, no, you can't have the constitutional rights, and we will gin up as much hatred and as much conflict as we can among certain groups so that you keep your stupid voice down, okay? Because we'll empower these even more. Okay, and that's a long-standing trick that different socialists have used over the last 100 years or 150 years, and I do believe that that's a part of this.
That's a major part of this. The whole entire democratic machine, that's exactly what they're doing, programming the minds of everyday people to feel as if that they are really going to need them because they're the only aspect left to truly hold a just society. But at the same time, these same people are co-opted by the cultural movements that are among us. Kamala Harris, she's someone who is, how can I put this, a proponent of Black Lives Matter and some of these cultural movements just trying to seize on the opportunities and the moments.
Imagine President Trump goes up and says, hey, we're under attack and everybody needs to pick up their weapons and, fight for whatever. Okay, imagine he did that, which he never has. Okay, imagine he did that, what kind of response there would be. So the reason I bring that up is because in a very simple way, if you look at it like that, if you have factions that you've supported or that you support that are okay with, kind of violence or property destruction or whatever, or carrying weapons to intimidate certain people or certain neighborhoods, if you back them, okay, then you can use them. They'll listen to you. They'll be like, yeah, we're the same team. So now if you want something done as a politician, you just hit that trigger and you say, okay, go here. This is the real problem. Go there. We're not going to prosecute you. This is a matter of justice. Go over there and do what you want. This is about justice. This is about race. This is about whatever. Okay? But that's really kind of, it seems like, okay, some people in the media are treating us. And that's kind of what it's turned into, and that's how they use it. Now, Trump could go and say, hey, you have the Second Amendment, and go ahead and fight for your rights and your businesses, and go stand in front of your stores and do what you need to do, because you have property rights in the Second Amendment. He hasn't done that, okay, because we don't want that type of hell on earth or in this country. But it seems like that conjunction or that relationship between certain leaders and certain groups, that they're okay with doing that. They're okay with saying, go over here and destroy, go over here and do what you need, because it serves their interests as politicians. And it makes you very powerful to be able to have people to listen to you and to, kind of basically, say, go ahead, do what you want. And that's a powerful thing. People are willing to listen to any politician and use weapons to do whatever the hell they want.
And that's why I say lots of cities and lots of places are going to be open to the opportunities of different chops and chases in a left or a right-wing sense, because yes, it's like what you're saying. Lots of these establishment political figures, they're going to just seize on the opportunities on the moments, such as the Seattle mayor did. Lots of people say, well, how did that happen, or why did it go on for so long? She let them do it because she wanted them to do it. And at the same time, she was for some of the things that they were saying, so she wanted to let them express themselves. When it does happen, you're going to start to see the Civil War-ish type of anarchy start to build within our society. Biden is elected, and as he gets sworn in under a dementia state, this is some of the things you're going to start to see. And then as he returns America back to business as usual.
That's if they win, and that's if no other crazy stuff happens between now and then. I mean, like I said, it wouldn't take much for the president to start telling his people to say, hey, look, we're under attack, and it is a civil war. And I mean, just imagine if he hasn't said any of that stuff. He hasn't. Some people have suggested it in the media, and some people, right-wing commentators have suggested that we're in a kind of a cultural civil war, a political civil war. But we've never talked about, hey, he's never tweeted or gone up and said, "Hey, everybody buy all the weapons you can, get all the ammo you can."
Oh, if Trump loses, he's definitely going to start saying all that. He's definitely going to start saying, I can definitely see that on election night.
It's true, and he doesn't say it. I mean, then he'd be like, then he would be kind of, then his own followers would be like, wait, well, what were we backing this whole time? I don't want to speculate, and it's not a place we want to be in our country. But if it was true, if there was a plan and he knew about it for Americans' rights to be taken over and the Constitution to be thrown out and the flag to be torn down, and it was that's the job of a president, and he'd still be president until January. To protect, it's the vow he takes, to protect from foreign and domestic threats. That's exactly what you're supposed to do as a president. So that's a huge problem if that, our speculations about what Biden and Kamala would do, or whoever it was, and if we still has a president who actually believes that this is a movement that is going to take down the country that he's supposed to defend.
Look. Trump, he has barely disabled the deep state within our government itself. He hasn't really just did what he sought out to do, and he's really been struggling to do that, and in many ways he doesn't even understand the whole entire system itself drastically, and he wonders why John Bolton goes out and writes a book that's going to be a bestseller about his whole entire administration, making him look like a fool. Quite frankly, honest with you, I don't feel sorry for him.
My belief on that. In my opinion, it's because he hired Jeff Sessions, and Jeff Sessions really isn't as smart as people thought he was, and he recused himself. He got the position because he supported Trump early on, but also because he's a long-time senator and was supposedly so greatly respected and such a great man, blah, 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 lifetime politician. And then he gets in there and he follows these foreign ethics rules that were instated under Obama and says, I'll recuse myself and allow this investigation, to go on. And he just fell right into.
But it was already out of Sessions' hands. It was already out of Sessions' hands.
You can't eliminate a deep state when you're under investigation for impeachment.
But
that's like they totally sabotaged him, and it totally worked because of Jeff Sessions.
It was already out of Sessions' hands. Obama was already investigating Trump. Obama had many of his properties under wiretap. Obama was listening to Trump, to many of his conversations. Trump was colluding with the Russians in some sense, but not in the way that they suggested Flynn was. And they understood that Trump had affiliated with Russia. They could use that to their advantage, on top of Flynn becoming the national security advisor to their advantage, which led to a lot of things, because he was going to become the most powerful person in terms of national security in our country and all the information he'll have available at his disposal. But it was really going to lead into Obama and Clinton and him and his knowledge that he has on them as well, releasing many things.
Well, that's exactly it proves my point. Why Trump has not been able to eliminate the deep state or reform it into what it would need to be for us to not be still under a really great authoritarian threat that could carry Biden to the presidency.
But if he was such a political whiz, why would he nominate John Bolton? Who is John Bolton? Why would he nominate him? A crony, technocratic, right-wing conspiracist himself. Why would Trump?
Well, he says, and I think there's some validity in here. But first of all, he's not a political expert because he did make a lot of mistakes, and he started in the game in 2015 really as a serious candidate. He's not an expert, he was a beginner. But number two, the reason he says, or at least that people defend that he picked Bolton anyway, was because you want to have a lot of differing opinions. And there are some executives where that's true. They actually appoint people specifically to have differing opinions on their board, so that they, there's different factions or, different ideas that are represented, before a final decision's made. I don't know if that's true. It might be true. It might not be true. But he fired him. He hired him. He actually came out while Bolton was still there, and he said, if we do things Bolton's way, we're gonna, the entire world is going to explode. well, fine. If we need to nuke people, then, then they respond with nukes, then at least, we have, the solution, and it's over, and we win the war. And that's why I think Bolton was fired. But Bolton, even people who, don't like Trump said Bolton was kind of like a pretty big scumbag for doing this.
Bolton was an idiot. Bolton is an idiot in terms of his whole entire national security philosophy. He's an idiot. And Trump nominated him, and not only is he now basically looking like a fool for doing so, but hell, Bolton is basically a proponent of the deep state himself in terms of the things that he was doing under Trump. Not only allowing it, but not really knowing, just really in a sophisticated sense of the deep state and how they really were still going about their agenda in terms of our foreign policy. The whole entire administration has been co-opted by the deep state, really, to be honest with you. He's done a little bit, somewhat, to try to limit the gains, but there's just no way, any way, that he's been able to really significantly reduce the size of the deep state throughout our whole entire federal government. Trump has not been able to do that.
What's his name? Schumer, he went on, and it was like, if you attack our intelligence community, they have, 1.5 million ways to get back at you, and that's exactly what they did. And, under impeachment, they're not going to, with all the rules and all the politics involved, while the Mueller investigation was going on, and then into impeachment with, that all still happened fairly recent ago, where he was acquitted, and that was their way to kind of neuter him and his ability to really drain the swamp, so to speak.
He hasn't, but that's the thing. The swamp has not been drained at all in any way, shape, or form. If anything, the swamp has really just merely been gaining on his presidency.
Well, it has been drained, and I can share sources with you and lists of names that have been gone and fired, which has been very good, but not to the degree that
not nearly to the degree that he would have to. This presidency is nowhere near a Reagan type of presidency. Let's just be clear about that. It's nowhere near that. He has not really significantly, drastically shifted the government to truly drain the swamp of its deep state roots with technocratic politics and these establishment politicians who are embedded in the system and come up within the system itself. He should call it out for what it is and truly go after it. But you say he has to play these political games to basically stay alive and to keep his political future alive and to make all these compromises with them to keep his presidency alive. But if he was truly an outsider, a populist outsider, he would give the people what they truly want and truly go after the establishment truly for what it is.
But you can't do that if you're impeached. And if he did do that, he would have been impeached. We wouldn't even be talking about this because he wouldn't be president.
So you basically said they wouldn't have impeached him, they would have got him.
They would have impeached him if he didn't compromise and make deals with the Senate leadership, like Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham. They would have voted against him. That would have been very easy. There was only a few votes that mattered.
Until, and the viewers they'll see this map, until he truly significantly shifts the states that he really truly needs to win, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. Biden has a significant lead in all those states by probably 7 points plus or more. And not just those states, but Florida, Arizona, and many other states, North Carolina. Hillary had leads in these states too, but they were much more smaller already in terms of the single digits, more so at 3%, 2%. In a lot of these states, 2%, Michigan more so for Clinton. And then on election day, she was actually at 0%. So that's why I say they weren't off drastically at all, really. So Biden has significant leads in a lot of these states. So until Trump actually flips Democratic voters over to the Republicans, or the Republican vote somehow increases drastically in one way or another, because we all know there's more Democrats there in those states. They have gone back to their Democratic roots and they have elected Democratic governors after 2016. The places that Trump has done it and the Republicans have done it are Ohio and Florida, not even North Carolina, because North Carolina has Roy Cooper, a Democratic governor. which is why many people can see it going through the Democrats. It's just looking like one of those years, Mr. Mack. I mean, that's why I keep saying.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not cocky enough to say that. You know, I remember when I was a little kid, and you know, my dad told me that Bush was going to be Clinton, and I was looking at, you know, different newspaper headlines, and I was like, no, I don't think so, Dad. And he's like, you'll see, and I turned out to be right. You know, so I don't like go around and say or really believe that, you know, Trump's going to win for sure, or even, you know, might be the favorite right now. I hear what you're saying, and I just think that people, a lot of people don't pay attention until the very end of the political cycle, which will mean in September and October. That's where you're going to really have a lot of people activated. And again, it's just really hard, you know, despite everything that you say, or, you know, all the things that you just said that might be true. It's just so, it's so hard for me to conceptualize knowing and seeing the amount of support that I see Trump getting compared to what I saw in 2016, because he just has so much more now. And it's just really hard for me to kind of conceptualize that, even though he might have so much more support than he had back then, that an old man who doesn't even know what he's talking about could beat him. It's just hard for me to conceptualize that. I'm just being honest.
It's just the way that the DNC, the media industrial complex, the way they propped up Biden in the cultural times. That's what I'm saying. Basically, COVID plus race is what Trump is going to remember in January. That's what he's going to remember, because that's what it's shaping up to be, because he's allowing it to shape up to be that. Because everything that you say, the Democratic Party is the larger corporate elitists have been trying to achieve in terms of taking down the American flag and putting up another flag. They have intertwined lots of these mixtures of philosophies in terms of a cultural issue since. And when that larger demographic of America doesn't get it, because this is going to be the demographic that pushes them over the line, we're truly going to see the electorate at its masses for the first time in a long time. And it's going to be the perfect storm. I could be wrong, but with everything that's going on right now and the way things are shaping up right now, I just can't see it any other way. Like I keep saying, the Republicans, they're going to have to defend states they haven't had to defend in a long time. I keep saying this. Florida, Texas, Ohio, those should be off the table. Arizona's already gone. It's already gone.